The garage door rattled shut, sealing us in a world of oil stains and secrets. I stood there, heart pounding like a drum, as the boy next door, now a man, stepped closer, his eyes holding a question I wasn't ready to answer. This wasn't supposed to happen, not here, not with him. My name is Ethan Caldwell, 27. A mechanic with grease-stained hands and a life I thought I had figured out. I'd moved to this quiet suburb of Asheville, North Carolina, 2 years ago, seeking a fresh start after a messy breakup in Atlanta. The house was a fixer-upper, the kind of place where every creak told a story, and the garage was my sanctuary, a place to rebuild engines and maybe myself. I'm tall, broad-shouldered, with a scruffy beard I never quite tame, and I've always kept my head down. Relationships, they were complications I didn't need, or so I thought. Then there was Lucas Harper, 24, the neighbor's son. He'd been away at college in Seattle when I moved in, but this summer he was back. I'd seen him mowing the lawn across the street, his lean frame moving with a quiet confidence, blonde hair catching the sunlight. His parents, Karen and Tom, were the kind of folks who brought over casseroles and invited you to barbecues. Lucas, though, he was different. His green eyes held a spark, a mix of curiosity and defiance, like he was searching for something no one else could see. It started innocently enough. One humid June evening, Lucas knocked on my garage door, holding a busted bicycle chain. "Hey, Ethan," he said, his voice low and warm, like he was sharing a secret. "Think you could help me fix this?" I nodded, wiping my hands on a rag, and let him in. The garage smelled of motor oil and sawdust, and the single bulb overhead cast long shadows. We worked side by side, his fingers brushing mine as he handed me tools. I told myself it was nothing, just neighborly help. But the air felt heavier each time he laughed, each time his gaze lingered. Over the next few weeks, Lucas found reasons to stop by. A loose bolt on his skateboard, a flat tire on his mom's car. Each visit stretched longer, our conversations drifting from small talk to something deeper. Music, dreams, the weight of expectations. He told me about his art major, how he painted abstracts that no one in his family understood. I shared stories of my dad, a mechanic like me, who'd taught me to fix anything but my own heart. Lucas listened, really listened, and it stirred something I'd buried long ago. One night, under a sky bruised with storm clouds, Lucas showed up with a six-pack of cheap beer and no excuse. "Just felt like hanging out," he said, leaning against the workbench, his smile tentative. I should have sent him home. I was older, supposedly wiser, and I knew the rumors that could spark in a town like this. But I didn't. We sat on the concrete floor, backs against the wall, and talked until midnight. He told me about a guy he dated in Seattle, how it ended when the guy couldn't handle Lucas being open about who he was. "I'm done hiding," Lucas said, his voice steady but laced with pain. "Life's too short." I nodded, my throat tight. I hadn't told anyone. Not my family, not my friends. That I'd spent years wrestling with the same truth. Growing up in Georgia, I'd learned to keep my head down, to blend in. Being gay wasn't something you shouted about, not where I was from. But Lucas, he was fearless in a way I envied, and it made me question the walls I'd built. The moment it changed was a Wednesday, the air thick with the promise of rain. Lucas came over, his usual grin replaced by something quieter, more intense. "I need to show you something," he said, pulling a small canvas from his bag. It was one of his paintings, swirls of blue and gold, chaotic but beautiful, like a storm caught on canvas. "It's you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The way I see you." I stared at the painting, my chest tight. No one had ever seen me like that. Not as a mechanic, not as the guy next door, but as something more. I looked up, and Lucas was closer now, his breath warm against my cheek. "Ethan," he said, and my name sounded like a prayer. Then he kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, like he was giving me a chance to pull away. I didn't. My hands found his waist, and the world narrowed to the heat of his lips, the thud of my heart. The garage, with its tools and clutter, became a universe of its own. When we pulled apart, his eyes were wide, searching mine. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted, a nervous laugh escaping him. I wanted to say I had too, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I kissed him again, harder this time, and it felt like coming alive. But even as my hands tangled in his hair, a voice in my head screamed that this was dangerous. Lucas was the neighbor's son, young and bold, and I was the guy who fixed cars and kept secrets. What were we doing? The next morning, I woke to the sound of Karen's voice outside, calling Lucas for breakfast. I stood in the garage, the memory of his kiss burning through me, and wondered how long we could keep this hidden. Asheville wasn't Atlanta, but it wasn't a haven either. I'd heard the whispers at the local diner, seen the looks when two men sat too close. And Lucas? He was ready to live out loud, but I wasn't sure I could. That afternoon, Lucas texted me, "Meet me tonight. Same place." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, torn between desire and fear. I typed back a single word. "Okay." That night, the garage felt different, like it held the weight of our choices. Lucas slipped through the side door, his silhouette framed by the faint glow of a streetlight. He didn't say anything at first, just crossed the room and pulled me into a kiss that tasted like urgency and courage. My hands found the curve of his back, and for a moment, I let myself forget the world outside. But the world didn't forget us. As we sat on an old crate, sharing a beer, Lucas told me about his parents. "They're good people," he said, his voice soft but strained. "But they don't get it. Dad thinks being gay is a phase, something I'll grow out of. Mom just pretends it's not real." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "What about you? You ever tell anyone?" I shook my head, staring at the concrete floor. My dad would have lost it. He was old school, thought men should be a certain way. I learned to keep quiet. I paused, the memory of my father's voice sharp in my mind. After he died, I thought it'd be easier, but it's not. Not when you're used to hiding. Lucas reached for my hand, his fingers warm against mine. "You don't have to hide with me," he said. It was a promise, but it felt like a challenge too. I wanted to believe him, to believe we could carve out a space for this, whatever this was, but doubt gnawed at me. What if his parents found out? What if the neighbors started talking? I'd built a life here, quiet but safe. Could I risk it for him? Over the next few days, we fell into a rhythm. Lucas would come over after dark, slipping into the garage like a secret. We'd talk, kiss, sometimes just sit in silence, the hum of the cicadas outside filling the gaps. Each moment felt stolen, precious, but the weight of secrecy grew heavier. I caught myself glancing out the window, checking for prying eyes. Lucas noticed. "You're scared," he said one night, his voice gentle but firm. "I get it, but I'm not going anywhere." His words stayed with me, but so did the fear. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, the air sticky with late summer heat. Lucas showed up with a sketchbook, pages filled with drawings of us. Moments I hadn't realized he'd memorized. Me laughing over a wrench, my profile against the garage light. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice raw. "I don't want to." I pulled him close, my heart racing, but before I could respond, A sharp knock echoed through the garage. We froze. "Ethan? You in there?" It was Karen, Lucas's mom. Her voice was casual, but my pulse spiked. Lucas slipped behind a stack of tires, and I opened the door, forcing a smile. "Hey, Karen. Just working late." She peered inside, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Have you seen Lucas? He's not answering his phone." I shook my head, my throat dry. She nodded, but there was something in her look, suspicion, maybe, that lingered as she walked away. When I closed the door, Lucas emerged, his face pale. "That was close," he whispered. "Too close." The next day, I overheard Karen and Tom talking in their driveway, their voices low but sharp. "He's been sneaking out," Tom said. "I don't like it. Something's going on." My stomach twisted. Were they onto us? I texted Lucas to stay away for a few days, but he showed up anyway, his jaw set. "I'm not letting them control me," he said. "I'm not ashamed of this. Are you?" His question hit like a punch. I wasn't ashamed. Not of him, not of us, but I couldn't shake the fear of what came next. I'd seen what happened when people like us got too bold in places like this. A guy in my old town had been jumped for holding his boyfriend's hand in public. I didn't want that for Lucas. I didn't want that for me. But Lucas was relentless. The next night, he brought a small speaker and played a playlist of soft indie songs, pulling me into a slow dance in the middle of the garage. "This is our space," he said, his lips brushing my ear. "No one can take it from us." I wanted to believe him, but the shadows felt closer now, like the world was pressing in. The tension broke on a Saturday night, 2 weeks after that first kiss. Lucas had snuck over again, his eyes bright with defiance. We were laughing over a story he'd told about a disastrous art class when headlights swept across the garage window. A car door slammed, and heavy footsteps approached. Before I could react, Tom burst through the side door, his face red with anger. "Lucas," he barked, "get out here. Now." Lucas stood, his shoulders squared, but I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. "Tom, it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" He cut me off, his gaze swinging to me. "I trusted you, Ethan. You're supposed to be a neighbor, not this." The word hung in the air, sharp and ugly. Lucas grabbed his father's arm. "Dad, stop. This is my life. My choice." Tom shook him off, his voice rising. "You're throwing everything away for what? Some fling? You're better than this, Lucas." The word stung, but Lucas didn't flinch. "I'm not throwing anything away," he said. "I'm finally being honest." I stood frozen, the weight of Tom's anger crashing over me. I wanted to defend Lucas, to tell Tom he was wrong, but years of silence held me back. Tom grabbed Lucas's arm, pulling him toward the door. "We're talking about this at home." Lucas looked back at me, his eyes pleading, but I didn't move. Couldn't. The next day, the Harper house was quiet, the curtains drawn. I didn't see Lucas, and my texts went unanswered. Guilt gnawed at me. I should have said something, done something. Instead, I'd let him face his father alone. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked across the street and knocked on their door. Karen answered, her face tight. "Now's not a good time, Ethan. I just need to know he's okay," I said. She sighed, her eyes softening slightly. "He's upstairs. But Tom's upset. Give it time." I nodded, but as I turned to leave, I heard Lucas's voice from the porch. "Ethan, wait." He looked tired, his eyes red, but he managed a small smile. "Dad's freaking out, but I told him everything. About us. About me." He stepped closer, his voice low. I'm not giving this up. Not for him, not for anyone. I wanted to pull him into my arms, but Karen was watching from the doorway. Instead, I squeezed his hand, quick and hidden. We'll figure it out, I said, hoping I sounded surer than I felt. As I walked back to my house, I knew things couldn't stay the same. The garage wasn't just our space anymore. It was a battleground. The next week was a blur of avoidance and whispered phone calls. Lucas and I met in secret, stealing moments in the garage or late-night walks down empty streets. Each time, he pushed me to be braver, to stop hiding. We're not doing anything wrong, he'd say, his voice fierce. Why should we act like it? But the neighborhood was starting to notice. Mrs. Callahan, the elderly woman 2 houses down, gave me a pointed look when I passed her on my morning run. At the diner, a group of regulars fell silent when I walked in, their eyes lingering too long. I told myself it was paranoia, but then Tom cornered me outside the hardware store. Stay away from my son, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You're trouble, Ethan. I don't know what you're playing at, but it ends now. I wanted to argue, to tell him I cared about Lucas, but the words wouldn't come. I just nodded, hating myself for it. That night, Lucas showed up at the garage, his face stormy. You didn't say anything to him, he said, pacing. You let him think he's right. I tried to explain, the fear, the years of keeping quiet, but Lucas shook his head. I need you to fight for this, Ethan. For us. If you can't, what's the point? His words cut deep, and for the first time I saw doubt in his eyes. I pulled him close, kissing him with a desperation I hadn't felt before. I'm trying, I whispered. I'm not like you. I don't know how to be this brave. He softened, resting his forehead against mine. You don't have to be me. Just be with me. We made a plan. Lucas would talk to his parents again, try to make them understand. I'd tell my sister, Mia, who lived in Charlotte. She was the only family I had left, and if anyone would get it, she would. The next day, I called her, my hands shaking as I told her about Lucas. I'm happy for you, she said, her voice warm. But you've got to stop running from yourself, Ethan. You deserve this. Her words gave me strength, but it didn't last. That evening, Lucas texted me, Dad's sending me back to Seattle. Tomorrow. My heart sank. I ran across the street, not caring who saw. Lucas was in his room packing a bag. He thinks distance will fix me, he said bitterly. But I'm not going. You can't just run away, I said, my voice cracking. You've got school, your art. He cut me off, grabbing my hands. I'm not running. I'm choosing. I want to stay here, with you. His eyes were fierce, but I saw the fear behind them. He was 24, full of dreams and defiance, but still so young. I couldn't let him throw everything away. We'll find another way, I said, pulling him into a hug. I promise. But as I held him, I wondered if I could keep that promise. The next morning, I woke to a text from Lucas. Meet me at the garage. Noon. I didn't know what he was planning, but I knew it was a turning point. When I got there, Lucas was waiting, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. I told them I'm staying, he said, and I told them about us. For real this time. I stared at him, my heart pounding. What did they say? He shrugged, a mix of hope and resignation in his eyes. Mom cried. Dad yelled. But I'm done hiding, Ethan. I need you to be done too. He was right. I'd spent years dodging the truth, building walls to keep myself safe. But Lucas had torn them down and I couldn't go back. I took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, let's do this. That afternoon, we walked across the street together. hand in hand. The neighborhood was quiet, but I felt every curtain twitch, every pair of eyes. Karen opened the door, her face pale. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't understand this, but he's my son. I don't want to lose him." Tom stood behind her, his jaw tight, but he didn't speak. Lucas squeezed my hand, his voice steady. "I love him," he said simply, "and I'm not ashamed." The words hung in the air, raw and unapologetic. I felt a weight lift, replaced by something new, hope. It wasn't perfect. Tom didn't speak to me for weeks, and the whispers at the diner grew louder. But Lucas stayed, renting a small apartment downtown with money from his art commissions. I helped him move in, painting the walls a bright blue to match his favorite canvas. The garage became our place again, not for hiding but for building, painting, fixing cars, planning a future. One night, months later, we sat in the garage, the same workbench between us. Lucas traced his fingers over the carved words from his painting. "Love finds a way." "We did it," he said, his smile soft but sure. I kissed him, the memory of that first night flooding back. It wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a promise kept. We weren't naive. The world still had sharp edges, and not everyone would accept us. But we had each other, and that was enough. The garage, once a place of secrets, was now a testament to courage. And every time I looked at Lucas, I knew I'd never hide again.